Scarlett sells apples and oranges at the local farmer's market. Originally, 1/5 of the fruit were red apples and the rest were oranges. A bit later, her brother added some green apples to the pile of fruit. After this change, 2/3 of the fruit were apples and the rest were oranges. What fraction of the apples were green apples? So just to let you know, this APP stands for apples and ORA stands for oranges. You could have guessed that. So the blue sentence tells me 1/5 of the fruit were red apples, and that means 4/5 were oranges. Okay, it's something I can infer. So let's write it down. This tells me if 1/5 of the fruits were apples, 4/5 must be the portion that represents oranges. That's why I have 4 rectangles to represent my oranges and 1 rectangle to represent my apples. And at this point in time, there were only red apples. Then what happens? Somebody, Scarlett's brother, adds some green apples, and this changes the balance. And now 2/3 of the fruit were apples. And when I say apples in this sentence, I mean green apples and red apples. Well, the important thing to note here is this: the oranges were not affected. The number of oranges did not change. However, the fraction of oranges certainly changed, and it has to be if 2/3 of the fruit were apples, 1/3 must have been oranges. I'm going to write 1/3 here. And that's an important finding. So the purple sentence allows me to conclude this is 1/3 of the fruit. Okay? So if 4 rectangles represent 1/3, the apples must represent 2/3, and it clearly says so on top as well. Okay, right here. Let me label this. This is 1/3. Well, 4 rectangles represent 1/3. 8 rectangles must represent 2/3. Now, on top, I only have 1 rectangle. I don't have 8 rectangles. I do need 8 rectangles altogether. I only have 1 rectangle. So how many additional rectangles do I need on top? I need 7 additional rectangles, and they better be green because they represent the green apples. Now take a look. Everything is perfect, and I'm going to prove it to you. So right now, if we focus on the original scenario based on the blue sentence, this is all we had. Clearly, 1/5 of the fruit were red apples, the rest were oranges. Okay, that makes sense. And after green apples were added, 2/3 of the fruit were apples and 1/3 were oranges. So clearly, if this is 2/3, 1/3, 2/3, and this is the other 1/3. So everything works out. My picture is consistent with the blue sentence, and it's also consistent with the purple sentence. So what is my answer? What fraction of the apples were green apples? Altogether, there are 8 rectangles that represent the apples, and 7 of the 8 rectangles are green. So my answer has to be 7/8 of the apples were green. And I'm just finding out what fraction of the apples were green. I'm not finding out what fraction of the fruit were green. So make sure you understand the difference.